Ever felt betrayal's cold, sharp dagger pierce your heart? That was my reality. What was once a loving marriage crumbled under the weight of deceit. You cheated on me. You weren't forced or even manipulated. I confronted her, the agony clear in my tone. Her muffled confession to another. Please, Jay, let me speak. I'm sorry, I really am. I was wrong. I can change. Confirmed my worst fears. This is my voyage through treachery to truth. See how I deal with it all. Enjoy watching it? That's tough. How long were you two together? Almost 20 years. The divorce should happen in November if she doesn't make it hard, which I think she won't. I saw a woman sitting by herself. I asked Joe who she was. He said her name was Beth, and she just got divorced today. I thought I'd talk to her. What's the worst that could happen? Hi, I'm Jay. Mind if I sit? I'm not great company, and I'm not looking for anything. She said, I get it. Joe said you just got divorced today. I filed for mine today. It would be nice to have someone to talk to, I mentioned. She looked at me for a bit. Okay, said. I'm Beth, and I've been married for 6 years. I was married for nearly 20 years. Want to share stories? I asked. Beth smiled. I said I hadn't eaten all day and asked if she wanted to eat together. We'd both been drinking, so food sounded like a good plan. I waved Joe over, and we each ordered a Reuben sandwich and fries. I also asked for more drinks, same food choice. That seemed like a good sign. She was pretty, probably in her early 30s. She had that girl next door vibe. You might not notice her at first, but when you really look, she's beautiful. Not a lot of makeup, not the kind to visit a salon every day. Some might say plain, but she was more than that. She was glad I sat with her as she felt very down. Having someone to chat with made her feel a bit better. During lunch, she shared a bit of her story with me. I've lived here all my life. I went to college to be a teacher because I've always loved kids. I've been teaching at the local elementary school for 8 years. I dated a bit, but nothing serious until I met Ray, who is now my ex. He sold sound systems to schools. The first time I saw him, we just clicked. We chatted. And the next time he visited the school, he asked me out. After that, we dated like most people do. 6 months in, he proposed. And I said yes. Life was pretty standard. I taught and he sold his products, sometimes traveling for a couple of days. Our life didn't really stand out. We went to movies, danced, though I'm not the best dancer. He wanted kids, and we tried. But after a couple of years, a doctor told me I could have kids. But it would be tough because of my health. I tried some medicine, but it didn't work. Ray got upset with me, but it was out of my hands. We started to drift apart. I suggested adoption, but he wanted his own kids, not someone else's. That didn't bother me. I'm around kids all day and love them. I didn't mind not having my own. Coming home was my break from kids. I would have liked to have kids for Ray, though. Then last year, he came home with big news. We needed to talk. I knew something was wrong. He confessed he had an affair with his secretary, and she was pregnant. I didn't know what to say. He said he loved me, but she was having his child. The first thought I had was he'd be a terrible dad. I felt bad for the kid. He'd have a dad who cheats and only thinks about himself. We fought, and I said he could keep his girl and her baby. I was leaving him and would move out in a week. He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away, telling him not to touch me. That night, I stayed with my mom and dad, and the next day, Dad and I went early to grab my stuff. The rest had to be sorted by court. We owed as much as we had. He liked to spend, showing off, using a lot of his and some of my money too. We divided what was left, and I kept my car and the savings I had from before we married. So I was starting from scratch. Now I ran a nice place and got most of the furniture I needed. He's a jerk, I said. What? She looked at me. Your ex. He lost a great woman who loves kids, and if you ask me, is pretty. He only cared about himself. You're way better off. After lunch, Beth said she felt a lot better. Instead of sharing my tough story, I suggested we meet another time for that talk. I had a couple of drinks, but wasn't sure how many Beth had since she got there first. I offered to drive her home thinking she might have had too much. Jay, that's sweet, but I'm not sure I'm ready. She began. I cut in. Beth, I'm just driving you to make sure you're safe. I'll grab a cab back later. That's all. I want to make sure you're safe. Joe, the bartender, knows me. I'm a good guy. I smiled. We stood up and I walked her to her car. She wasn't really drunk, but why risk it? I opened her door and noticed she was a bit tipsy as she got in. I don't think she saw me looking. I drove her home and walked her to her door. Before we left the bar, I had called a cab to pick me up from her place. She said thanks for looking out for her. I asked if I could call her later. She smiled and gave me her number. I also asked if she knew of any places for rent around here since I was planning to move soon. Her block had all condo units. Many were for rent. She said she'd check and tell me if she found something. It was a pretty nice area with mostly 2 or 3 bedroom apartments. Beth had a 2-bedroom, she said. My taxi came and I gave her back her keys. We said bye and I went home knowing I was in for a big fight. Here's the full story. I'll keep some parts from Beth. After I finished a 2-year course to be a claims adjuster, I met my wife Linda. She had a small car crash and I went to check her car for insurance. I told her how much money our company would give for the car fix. We fixed small damages at our own shops, or we pay if someone wants to go to a different shop. Linda chose our shop for her car. I found her very attractive. She worked at a small newspaper writing about deaths, some ads, and even taking pictures. I asked her out, and she said yes. We hung out a lot. The first time we got together was amazing. Within 7 months, we were married. We had 2 kids over the next couple of years. Linda's mom helped with the kids while we worked. I looked after a big area of 4 counties, and sometimes I had to stay away from home for a night or 2. It was all about my work plan. It was mostly farms I dealt with. My wife Linda and I were okay with this. Linda was a great mom, and I thought I was a good dad too. We took the kids on trips to fun places, zoos, and all the places where families like to go. We were close, especially when I had been away for a bit. I missed her when I was gone. I always stayed true to her, even though my job gave me chances to stray. Our love life was simple but good. We tried different ways of being close, like the classic modes, her on top and a few others. I liked to make her feel good with my mouth, and she really liked it. We always started like that. She would do the same for me when she was really in the mood. But she didn't like it when I finished that way, and it could end things for the night quick. Sometimes she was okay with it if I used protection because she really didn't like the ending part. She also didn't like it the one time we tried something a bit more daring. It ended fast and wasn't fun for me either. But she didn't mind a gentler touch in the same area. A few years back, Linda got a better job in advertising. She started to work on special projects and reviews for new businesses in town. But about 6 months ago, she started acting differently. Even the kids noticed. My daughter, now in her first year at the local college, but still living with us, saw it. My son in his last year of high school and planning to go to the same college did too. Linda started to fuss with us all more. I told the kids it might be her age change, and we just had to deal with it. I wanted to make Christmas special, so I bought tickets for a holiday boat trip. We'd leave on Christmas Eve and come back on New Year's Day. I hoped it could help our marriage. I planned to keep it a secret until after Thanksgiving. She often said I wasn't fun anymore. I wasn't sure what she wanted. Maybe we wanted different things now. Dad, my daughter Becky said, Mom goes out a lot when you're not here. She didn't do that before. I asked her where she goes, and she said with friends. Why are you telling me this? You don't think that's true? I asked. I didn't say that, but she goes out a lot, like twice a week, only when you're out. She comes back by midnight, but it bothers me. The next day I talked to Linda about her going out. She snapped at me. I'm not doing anything wrong. I go out with friends and some work people. The kids are big now. I get bored when you're away, so I go out sometimes. I told Becky what her mom said. Did you ever see her friends? I asked. Just a few times, letting Mom in the car. They looked too fancy, like you'd see in Las Vegas or something. One lady was black, but Mom said she was a work friend. They were planning something for a new club. And Mom, how does she dress like them? Not really, but she does dress up some. She even uses some of my clothes which are too small for her.
I wish she would just act like Mom again.
Maybe this is just another one of her things, Becky said. That got me thinking. Had Linda been up to stuff like this before and the kids never told me? I always trusted her, so I never felt the need to check on her. Becky was pretty sharp and could spot changes. I asked my son Brian about it, and he said he found Linda's friends attractive, but agreed with Becky that they dressed up too much. He also wasn't fond of seeing his mom in really short dresses. Linda was quite petite. She was only 5'1" and weighed around 120 pounds. She worked hard on her looks, and it showed. She was attractive, but kids don't like to see their mom that way. One night, Linda called me. She said she was going to dinner with a client at a lounge about 30 miles away and would be home late. I was nearby checking out a damaged car and driver, so I decided to see what was happening for myself. I entered the lounge and told the person at the door that my wife was there and I needed to talk to her. I walked up to Linda's table and caught her off guard. "Jay, what are you here for?" she asked, looking a bit worried. Across from her sat a very attractive woman, just like the kids had said. She dressed like she was straight out of a magazine. She just looked at me. "I was close by when you called." "Who's your friend?" "Oh, my bad. Jay, meet my client, Charlie." "Charlie, this is my husband, Jay." Charlie gave me her hand in a sort of weak way. I didn't kiss it, but did hold it for a bit. "Jay, sorry, but this is a work dinner. Charlie and I need to talk about a new nightclub she and some friends are opening soon. They're letting me cover the story first." I regretted stopping by, but I was nearby. "I will see you in a few hours." I called the children and informed them that I would be taking them out for pizza. "Charlie, it was a pleasure to meet you." I gave Linda a brief kiss. I knew she was annoyed, but I was indifferent. I exited the lounge and phoned the children, informing them that their mother was out with a client and that I would be taking them out for pizza. I chatted with them and mentioned that I had met their mother's friend, Charlie. They were correct in saying that her friends were overdressed, but she was quite impressive. I told them that their mother had informed me about a new club that was set to open, and that she was getting the exclusive. I believe they were at least relieved that I was aware of what was happening. We enjoyed our pizza, and they each shared stories about school. When Linda arrived home, she expressed how embarrassed she was. She claimed I had humiliated her. What on earth? All I did was stop by to say hello to my wife. I knew that arguing with her was pointless when she was in this mood. She even hinted that I had nearly caused her to lose her exclusive story. What was she hiding? I sensed that something was amiss, but I couldn't quite pinpoint it. My initial thought was that maybe her friends were lesbians. I couldn't recall her ever mentioning other women aside from the usual comments about their appearance or clothing. If I discovered that she was involved with other women, I wasn't sure how I would react. Like many men, I had seen pornographic videos of two women or a man with two women. It was somewhat arousing, but when I imagined my wife as one of the women, it didn't seem as appealing. After all, she was the mother of my children. If she was involved with this woman, it might be something we could discuss. If she cheated on me with another man, there was no way I would even consider speaking to her. Here I was, assuming the worst, when she might simply be doing her job. For the next few weeks, she barely spoke to me unless necessary. She was nice at our kids' big day, but I felt it was just an act. Both our folks were there. We sure had to chat about us and where we're headed. Since meeting Charlie, I never had to stay away. She hadn't gone out with friends much either, which had me thinking. On Wednesday, I told her I'd be out Friday night, but back by Saturday morning. She didn't react and left for work. I didn't really need to go anywhere, but if Becky was right, Linda would be out. Worst case, I'd be wrong and just crash at a motel. I rang home around 8 at night and Brian said his mom went out with her girls. A lady had picked Linda up. She told Brian she'd be back late from a party in the next town. He named the club. It wasn't a spot for married ladies and moms. I checked it out and was struck by how packed it was. It attracted a younger set, lots with funky styles and piercings. I grabbed a drink and headed to the second floor. It was more of a lookout point, but it had a few spots to sit. I got hit on, figured she might be a pro or someone who worked there. She'd help me blend in since I'd stick out alone. I got her a drink, pricey for what it was, and another for me. I tried to listen to her, but was really trying to spot Linda. Finally saw her downstairs at a table with Lisa, a friend she drifted from who was now divorced. Being pals with Lisa again spelled trouble. Lisa's divorce was messy because people said she ran a bad business out of a bar she looked after. Linda said she knew nothing about it. I had no reason to doubt her at the time. After Lisa's divorce, I heard she moved away. But now I recall it was Linda who told me that. They were hanging out with two other ladies, both dressed up too much. One was Charlie, holding Linda's hand, and her other hand was on Linda's leg. Wow. I watched a bit longer to see what more would happen. From far, it looked like Linda was getting too cozy with this lady. Charlie was tall thanks to her very high heels. Next to Linda, most women seemed tall. The Asian lady looked a bit shorter. Both stood out for looking too fancy. The girl with me was glad I kept buying her drinks. Her job was to make me spend as much as possible, and maybe more for a price, of course. But hey, for everything else, there's MasterCard, right? She called herself Bambi and asked about getting a room. She noticed me watching Linda below and wondered if that excited me. She touched me and commented, "Doesn't seem like it. What do you like? I can help you find it." I said I was having a tough day but might return later. I saw Linda and her gang head for the door. I said bye to Bambi, gave her $20 and followed my wife and her group outside. Linda got into a car with Charlie while Lisa and the other lady took a different one. Of course I followed Linda. They drove to a motel, not even stopping at the desk. They must have booked ahead. I was about to approach the desk when I saw Lisa and the Asian lady exiting their car. I hid in case Lisa saw me. They walked past the front and took the lift up. I went to the front desk. I took a shot and asked if my wife Linda Bradford booked us in. She tends to forget stuff. The person at the desk smiled and looked it up. Yes, sir. She booked it this morning. I didn't know if I was lucky or sad she was paying for our room. At least I got what I needed. I asked if she left a key for me. Can I see some ID, please? He was just doing his job. I showed my driver's license. He said she got both keys earlier. I could get another, but it would cost $5. I sighed and handed over the money, saying, "I'll get her to pay me back for this." He smiled, saying his wife forgets things too, as he gave me a new key. We had room 421. It was booked for two, so he didn't doubt me. I wasn't sure what to say or do next. Unless she was really good at explaining, this could end our marriage. I hoped they were just talking work, but deep down I knew better. The only reason to sneak into a hotel room is for things you don't talk about. This was a suite with two rooms. It had been 20 minutes since they went in. I used the key and opened the door slowly. I could hear them next door. I felt dumb standing there. I've read stories about husbands doing this, but it was tougher than I thought. I couldn't believe the mess. They must have taken off their clothes as soon as they got in. I saw my wife's dress and her fancy underwear. It wasn't what she wore for me. I saw what must be Charlie's stuff. There was also a wig and different underwear. I could hear noises emanating from the adjacent room. I recognized Linda's moans, a sound I had been familiar with for the past 2 decades. It caused a jolt in my stomach. My spouse was being unfaithful with another man. I never considered arming myself. However, I did have my trusty pocket knife with me, as always. The first thing that crossed my mind was a scene from old movies where a man remarks, "You brought a knife to a gunfight." It's moments like these when my mind wanders into absurd thoughts. I had to question why I was even present, but I knew I needed to find out. I unfolded my knife and entered the room. There on the bed was Linda, unclothed. I couldn't believe my eyes. They both turned to look at me, visibly startled. Charlie glanced at my knife and pleaded, "Please don't harm me." This coward was a weakling. Linda lay there in a state of shock, unable to utter a word. I now felt completely in charge. I instructed Charlie, who still had remnants of an erection, to engage in sex with her. I informed him that this woman desired sexual intercourse. And if he didn't comply with my orders, I would harm him. No, don't do this in front of my husband, Linda cried out. It seemed she had regained her voice. I commanded her to be quiet. After this night, I would no longer regard her as my wife. As I mentioned earlier, my thoughts can sometimes become irrational. No, no, I hate it. Please refrain from doing so. I was uncertain if she was addressing me or Charlie. All I desired was a bit of retribution, but I did not wish to end up in jail because of it. It appeared that Lisa was launching a new nightclub located a distance away from town. She planned to host a female impersonator show along with various other performances. She reached out to Linda and offered her exclusive rights to cover and photograph the new nightclub. She had invited her to meet three of the female impersonators: Charlie, the Asian individual who could pass as male or female, and another one whom I had not encountered. He was described as black, according to Charlie. They were set to visit various lounges in town to promote Lisa's nightclub. Few people were aware that they were female impersonators. They certainly had me fooled. They refrained from speaking too much to avoid giving themselves away. I had captured images with my cell phone throughout the entire ordeal. I went to another room and shredded the clothes they had worn. I needed to release this anger, and it was the only solution I could think of. Charlie sat there terrified. I contemplated beating him up, but it would have only resulted in my arrest and imprisonment. No thanks. I instructed Linda not to return home that night. I would be moving out and consulting a lawyer. I'm not sure if she even heard me. She got up and went to the bathroom. I could still hear her vomiting. I left, returned the key card to the receptionist, and departed. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. Chapter 2.
I arrived home and both of my children were there.
I informed them that I had caught their mother cheating on me, and that I would be moving out and filing for divorce. I didn't disclose any details. Becky cried and expressed her hatred for her mother. Don't say that, Becky. Love your mother, but despise her actions. She has always loved you kids. I don't understand why she did what she did, but I can no longer remain married to her. I could never trust her again. Where are you going, Dad? Brian inquired. He was attempting to act mature, but I could see he was close to tears himself. I'll be staying with your grandparents until I find a suitable apartment. You kids can stay here with your mother. You'll be independent soon enough. You can always reach out to me if you need anything. I packed my personal belongings into a few suitcases and spent my final night in the house. Becky kindly made me breakfast the next morning. Linda did not return home that night. Upon informing my parents of my decision to divorce Linda due to her infidelity, they inquired about the possibility of reconciliation. I firmly stated that it was not an option. Becky informed me that her mother was dropped off by a man at noon, the same individual who had picked her up the previous night. I refrained from revealing to Becky that the woman and the man were one and the same. The following Monday, I visited my friend Bob, a lawyer, and detailed the situation to him. I requested that he initiate divorce proceedings to settle our finances and divide our assets. Despite her unfaithfulness, I intended to cite irreconcilable differences for the sake of our children. In the event that Linda contested the divorce, I planned to file for adultery and disclose the involvement of her friend Lisa. I had captured incriminating photos of Lisa engaging in explicit acts, which I provided to my lawyer along with the divorce papers. Urging him to expedite the process, he had the documents ready by the following Friday and delivered them to Linda's workplace. Despite her repeated attempts to contact me, I refused to engage with Linda. She even reached out to my parents, but my father made it clear that he was not interested in her perspective at that time. I later learned that Becky had conducted her own investigation. She mentioned hearing about Linda's friend Lisa returning to town to open a nightclub featuring female impersonators. Becky speculated whether this was the woman her mother was involved with. Her astuteness impressed me. I informed her that I was aware of the situation, but suggested that she direct any further inquiries to her mother. She mentioned that her mother rarely spoke to her or Brian, as their conversations often devolved into arguments about Linda's negative impact on the family. She also mentioned that her mother would often retreat to her room to cry. My attorney had frozen all of our joint accounts, preventing either of us from accessing them. Fortunately, I had my own credit card that I could use. I suspected that Linda also had a credit card solely in her name. Many of our bills were set up for automatic payment from our checking account, so those would continue to be paid. This arrangement would only last for a few weeks, and we would both be able to manage until then. The day the divorce papers were served, I went to a lounge and met Beth. I knew I had to return home to confront Linda, who would have received the papers by then. I called ahead and Linda answered the phone. I informed her that I would be coming over for our final discussion. When I arrived and knocked on the door, Linda opened it and expressed surprise that I hadn't entered. She mentioned receiving the divorce papers and accused me of making copies of certain pictures. As I walked in, she asked if I was willing to sign the papers and end the marriage. Linda then pleaded with me, claiming that we could work things out and professing her love for me. I dismissed her words, accusing her of being afraid of being alone and reiterating my belief that she had cheated on me. I mentioned rumors about her involvement with Lisa and a brothel, observing her reaction without revealing my sources. Linda nervously inquired about who had told me, but I refused to disclose any further information. Now that Lisa, your friend, has returned to town, it seems that you have resumed your unfaithful behavior. However, this time you were caught in the act. It appears that you did manage to secure the job of writing the story about the New Night Club. Engaging with the female impersonators was an added bonus. If anyone we know were to witness you with them, you could simply claim that they are your clients. Such an explanation would likely go unquestioned. It is truly disheartening to realize that I was deceived for so many years. It's as if you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. We once had a good life together. I almost wish I had never discovered the truth, but your continuous deceit pushed me to this point. Now that I am aware of the reality, I am utterly disgusted. I have no desire to know the extent of your infidelity. I wouldn't believe you regardless. It is clear that you were involved with Charlie, the Asian man, and the black man right from the start. I have no interest in learning about the others. Please, Jay, allow me to explain. I am genuinely sorry. I was mistaken, and I am willing to change. All I ask for is an opportunity to demonstrate this to you. Please grant me another chance. Becky mentioned that you purchased cruise tickets for us to spend the holidays together. Let's embark on this journey and start anew. I will indeed utilize the tickets and embark on a fresh start, but it will not be with you. In my eyes, you are no longer a part of my life. I urge you to sign the necessary documents to dissolve this farce of a marriage. Failure to comply will result in me initiating divorce proceedings based on adultery supported by the evidence you possess. As per the laws of our state, assets are typically divided equally. I propose that we split everything down the middle. You may retain the house while I will claim half of our savings. I have no interest in the house except for a few personal belongings that rightfully belong to me. I want nothing that serves as a reminder of you. I will wait for 2 days, and if my attorney does not receive the signed papers from you, I will proceed with the divorce on grounds of adultery. Do not underestimate me, as you will not emerge victorious. Consider the impact on your parents, friends, and children upon seeing the incriminating evidence. Knowing about your infidelity is one thing. Witnessing the proof, Linda completed the necessary paperwork for our divorce and promptly returned it to my lawyer the following day. My lawyer then prepared a document that divided our assets equally. I would receive the majority of our savings, while Linda would be granted the house and its furnishings. To ensure a clean break, I requested to have my name removed from our joint checking account and credit cards. We agreed that each of us would keep our respective vehicles, and since our children were already over 18, there would be no need for child support. Alimony was also unnecessary in our case. Both of us would retain our retirement programs. I had already assured our children that I would contribute to their education expenses, so they wouldn't have to rely on loans. They would need to work part-time during their studies and summers, but I wanted to support them financially. Bob, my lawyer, informed Linda that he would present the papers to a judge for approval. He also suggested that she could seek her own attorney to review the proposed decree if she wished. Linda expressed her desire to finalize everything quickly, indicating that she wanted to move on. Bob mentioned that she seemed disheartened. Perhaps she had hoped that, after being married for so long, I would give her another chance. She knew that I had always treated her fairly and prioritized our children's well-being. I suppose she had placed her trust in me, something I no longer had for her. Becky informed me that Linda had cried upon learning that I had planned a holiday cruise for the two of us as a fresh start without the children. She realized that she had gone too far and had been caught. When Bob returned from the judge, he informed me that I could retrieve my personal belongings. Surprisingly, he even asked Linda if she wanted to be present when I collected my things. However, she declined, stating that she trusted me. I managed to gather the few items I wanted in just 2 trips with a pickup truck. My father kindly offered to store them in the basement since I didn't have much. The next day, I received a phone call. "May I speak to J. Brad, please?" "This is he. How can I assist you?" I replied, recognizing the voice as a woman's. "This is Beth. Beth Williams. We met a week ago. You had asked me to look into available apartments in our area." I was taken aback that she was reaching out to me. My voice got softer. "Beth, sorry for being so harsh. It's been a tough week. Happy to hear from you. You talked about places to live. Is there one close to you?" "Yes, there is. Just a few steps away. An old couple left, and the owners haven't shown it's for rent yet. Want to see it?" "Yes, for sure. I'll be at your place in an hour. Can you join me to see it? I'll buy you dinner after." She said yes, and I got ready fast to meet her and see the place. Beth was so kind and easy to talk to. We checked out the place. It had 2 rooms and came with a stove, fridge, and a microwave. I told the person in charge I'd take it. I could move in next weekend after they cleaned it up. I need to sign for 6 months first. After paying the deposit and first month's rent, I took Beth to the Red Lobster for dinner. I shared that I was nervous, not having dated for 20 years. "If I mess up, please tell me," I said. I shared bits of my life, my job, and that I had 2 kids in college. She asked about my divorce, and I said it was almost done. In 60 days, I'd be single. I told her I found my wife with someone else. I had pictures so she couldn't lie. But I didn't talk about Charlie and company. I said, "We fought about the divorce." She said sorry, but I learned it wasn't the first time. I couldn't trust her again. "Your wife is a jerk," said Beth with a smile. I remembered saying that about her husband. We both laughed. I enjoyed being with her. She was so nice and calm. We had dinner and talked more than I drove her home. "Beth, thanks for everything. I'd like to see you again. Jay, after this weekend, we'll be living close." I discovered myself grasping her hands. "I will see you on Saturday," I stated. Although I departed, I truly did not desire to leave. She was completely different from Linda. I yearned to become better acquainted with her. On Saturday, I transported some of my furniture to the apartment. I retrieved a bedroom set from the basement along with a few other items, as my father and I were carrying the dresser inside. Beth appeared at the door. "Do you need any assistance?" she inquired. My car was filled with kitchen supplies. Most of them were given to me by my mother. She informed me that I required some items. Beth helped me place the belongings in the cupboards. I introduced her to my father, and he smiled at her. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Beth," he expressed. We returned to retrieve another load of furniture. This time it was furniture for the living room. Beth accompanied me in the car. My mother was surprised but delighted to meet her. I informed my mother that Beth had found the apartment for me and was my neighbor. Once we finished unloading the furniture and organizing my belongings, my father headed home. I asked Beth if she would like to go out for dinner again, as a way to express my gratitude for her assistance. "Can we return to the lounge where we first met and have a Reuben sandwich?" Beth asked. I adored the idea. When we entered, Joe waved at us. It was getting late in the evening and the place was a bit more crowded. We were seated and ordered drinks while waiting for our food. Beth shared more about herself, mentioning that she had an older sister She informed her sister about me, and her sister couldn't believe she allowed me to take her home. Now she wants to meet you. I suppose she is concerned about me being on the rebound. I told her that you were going through a divorce, and she nearly lost her composure. When we arrived back at Beth's apartment, we were holding hands once again. This time I leaned in and gently kissed her on the lips. I'm sorry, but I've wanted to do that since I met you. She stared at me, but didn't say much about it. Good night, Jay. Don't forget that you have to meet my sister next week before she goes crazy. I walked to my apartment and spent my first night in my new home. The next day I went to my parents' house for dinner. They asked if I had heard anything more from Linda. I informed them that it was over and I was just waiting for the divorce to be finalized. My mom brought up Beth and I shared what I knew about her. I waited a few days before contacting Beth, as I didn't want to seem too eager. I invited her out for dinner, but she suggested I come over, and she would prepare spaghetti for us. Naturally, I agreed. We sat on the couch with TV trays, enjoyed our meal, and watched TV. I cherished our time together. She was incredibly easy to converse with, knowing she had to work the next day. I decided it was time to leave. As I bid her goodbye at the door, I kissed her once more. This time gently. On Saturday, we visited her sister Sandy. I was slightly nervous, unsure of what to expect. Sandy had prepared dinner for us, and I met her husband, Tom, along with her two teenage children. She inquired about my profession, and I shared details about my job and alma mater. I also mentioned my two college-going children to her kids, who expressed their aspirations of attending college someday as well. After dinner, Tom and I sat in the living room and had coffee. We discovered we were the same age and shared many common interests. When the girls rejoined us, Sandy appeared to be more amiable. On our way back home, Beth informed me that her sister approved of me, and we both shared a laugh. Before leaving, I kissed her more passionately this time, expressing my fondness for her. She reciprocated, stating that she enjoyed my company as well. Jay, I don't mind dating you. In fact, I enjoy spending time with you. However, I won't engage in a physical relationship until your divorce is finalized, she disclosed. I assured her that I understood and that I simply cherished our time together. We began having dinner together at least twice a week, occasionally dining at either her parents' or my place on weekends. Despite not being intimate, we were a couple. A week before my divorce was finalized, I introduced Beth to Becky and Brian. We all dined together, and I made it clear to the kids that I didn't want to discuss their mother. The kids took a liking to Beth. During a pizza outing, they bombarded her with questions. Thrilled that I had found someone to keep me company, they even mentioned it to Beth. She just chuckled. She was that easy to get along with. Becky surprised me with her question to Beth. Would you be interested in going on a cruise with Dad during the holidays? He has tickets to leave on Christmas Eve and return on New Year's Day. I was taken aback. I thought about asking Beth closer to the time. Beth seemed a bit shocked. Dad, Becky said, she's a woman. She needs to know in advance to plan her outfits. I know you care about her. Otherwise, you wouldn't have asked us to meet her. Beth, it's true. I do have 2 tickets for a holiday cruise. I was planning to ask you after. My divorce is finalized next week, but a certain young lady spilled the beans. I understand it's a big decision, and I respect that. Yes, I'll go. Beth interrupted me. I would love to go on a cruise with you. And Becky was right. A woman needs more time to plan. Don't be too hard on her. I watched her smile at Becky. I could hear the sincerity in her voice. The following week, my divorce was finalized, and I wasn't unhappy about it at all. I asked Beth if she wanted to go out and celebrate with me. She was more than happy to join. She mentioned that a new nightclub had opened just outside of town and asked if I would like to check it out. I never disclosed the details of my divorce to her and told her we could give it a try. She mentioned that some of her colleagues at school had mentioned that the nightclub had female impersonators and famous people imitators like Elvis, Ricky Nelson, and many others. I knocked on her door and she looked stunning. She was wearing a black dress that accentuated her figure and was about 6 inches above her knees. I remember telling her that I never had a teacher who looked like her when I was in school. We invited Sandy and Tom to join us. I wasn't sure what to expect or if I should mention anything to Beth. The place was packed, but had the atmosphere of a Las Vegas nightclub. We were seated at a table and ordered drinks. The imitators were incredibly talented. They looked and sounded just like the original stars. Upon ordering dinner, the female impersonators took the stage while we were eating. Tom exclaimed, "Those can't possibly be men." Sandy chuckled and replied, "Take it easy, my friend. You might not like what you find if you put your hand in their pants." They flawlessly lip-synced to songs by renowned female singers with the original voices resonating through the speakers. I did recognize one of them, Charlie. The Asian performer went by the name Kim, and it was my first time seeing the black individual, Sable. Their performances were impressive, but I couldn't shake off the unsettling thoughts that crossed my mind. I knew Linda was well acquainted with all three of them. After the show, there was some dancing, and I couldn't keep this truth from Beth any longer. I confessed to her about Linda and catching her with one of the impersonators. I made it clear that I had no intention of keeping secrets from her. Beth kissed me and said, "I read your wife's article about this nightclub. I wanted you to bring me here because I hoped you would be honest with me. I sensed that you were hiding something, especially since you never mentioned where your ex-wife worked or who she associated with. I didn't mean to deceive you, Beth. There were certain things I preferred not to remember. I apologize if you thought otherwise. I love you, Jay, and I want you to know that you can tell me anything. You don't have to keep anything bottled up. I'm here for you if you ever need to talk." We left the club and dropped off Sandy and Tom, who expressed their gratitude for a wonderful evening and suggested that we should do it again sometime. On the way home, I asked Beth, "Your place or mine?" "Yours, please," she replied with a smile. Chapter 3. We arrived at my apartment. It was hard to believe that I was actually nervous. It had been over 20 years since I had been with another woman, and it had been more than 3 months since I was last with Linda. Beth gazed at me and inquired, "Jay, do you love me?" I'm not accustomed to opening up to men. Ray, my ex, was only the second man I've been with. I've always been reserved about dating, but with you, it feels different. Yes, I do love you. All I can think about is ensuring your happiness. This will be a unique and fresh experience for both of us. With those words, we shared a gentle yet passionate kiss. Following that night, we spent all our evenings together, alternating between her apartment and mine. While we didn't engage in sexual activities every night, we did cuddle frequently. As the time approached for our cruise, we encountered some resistance from our parents, who were more traditional and hesitant about us traveling as unmarried individuals, although they didn't explicitly state it. We could sense their disapproval. I took Becky and Brian aside and mentioned the possibility of proposing to Beth, asking for their opinion. They were supportive and expressed their love for Beth, acknowledging that she brought me happiness. I informed them that Beth and I hadn't discussed marriage yet, and she might want to wait. I simply wanted to gauge their feelings on the matter. On Christmas Eve, we embarked on a flight to Florida. The cruise ship we boarded was truly magnificent, and we were fortunate enough to have a cabin with a queen-size bed. We attended a meeting, which could only be described as a greeting, where they informed us about the ship's regulations and the numerous events that would take place throughout the following week. Both of us were filled with immense excitement. The ship was scheduled to depart from the dock. Within the hour, Beth and I stood on the deck, gazing out at the vast expanse of the ocean. She knew me so well. "What's on your mind, Jay? Is there something you'd like to share with me? Remember, no secrets." I smiled at her, tears welling up in my eyes, and expressed my profound love for her. Perhaps I was simply caught up in the moment. "What is it, Jay? You can tell me," Beth urged. I reached into my pocket and retrieved a ring. "Beth, I understand that we haven't known each other for a significant amount of time. You might believe that this is too early in our relationship, but I am certain about my feelings for you. Will you marry me?" "Oh my God. Yes, yes, of course I will." "When would you like to get married?" "Tonight, on this ship." I spoke to the captain, and he assured me that it could be arranged. He possesses all the necessary documents and has performed such ceremonies numerous times before. So, will you marry me tonight and let this serve as our honeymoon vacation cruise? We were both aware that many people would advise us to spend more time getting to know each other, but we were resolute in our desires. We wanted to be together. Regardless of any obstacles, Beth tearfully accepted my proposal. I contacted the captain, who then made an announcement over the loudspeaker, informing everyone that a wedding would be taking place in the main dining hall 1 hour after the ship set sail. I proceeded to don my suit and patiently waited for Beth in the dining hall. When she emerged, she was adorned in a stunning blue gown. She later revealed that she had initially purchased it for New Year's Eve. But this occasion was far more fitting. The dining hall was filled with well-wishers. Everyone loves a surprise wedding. As soon as we exchanged our vows, the crowd erupted in cheers. The first thing we did was call our parents, as well as Becky and Brian, to share the news of. We entered one of the numerous lounges and danced. The captain informed us that the buffet was prepared for dinner, and we would be the first to be served. It marked a delightful beginning to our honeymoon and a new chapter in our lives. Throughout the cruise, we visited 3 islands, indulged in delicious meals, and danced every evening. Not a single day passed without us expressing our love. We experimented with various positions, but had our preferred ones. I particularly enjoyed it when Beth would slowly lower herself onto me while I lay on my back. I could caress her breasts and observe her movements as she moved up and down on me. Our passion was evident as our fluids trickled down. We even made love on 2 different beaches and 3 times in the ocean. We visited a nightclub on one of the islands that featured female impersonators, which didn't faze me at all. Although we tried our luck at gambling, it wasn't really our cup of tea. Unfortunately, we never seemed to win at the slot machines. We made use of the pool, sauna, and hot tub. Although we contemplated making love in them, we were never alone. However, we engaged in some playful activities and then retreated to our cabin to continue our intimate moments. The New Year's Eve celebration was fantastic, but we had been partying all week. We ensured that we welcomed the new year with a bang. Upon our return, Sandy and Tom were waiting for us as we disembarked the plane. Both Beth and Sandy were in tears. "Take care of my little sister. Do you understand?" Sandy said. I embraced Sandy and assured her I will always be there for her. They treated us to dinner, and we shared stories about our cruise. Beth even disclosed to Sandy the frequency and locations of our lovemaking. Sandy glanced at me and simply smiled. Upon returning home, we resided in Beth's apartment. After discussing with my landlord, it was decided that I could move out but would not receive my deposit back. We opted for this option as it was the most cost-effective solution. Life continued, and we relished every moment. Sometimes we dined out while other times we stayed in. The majority of our free time was spent together. I spent very few nights away for work. Only when it was absolutely necessary. I desired to return home to be with Beth. After arriving home one day, Beth gazed at me with a different expression. I couldn't quite decipher it. "All right, what's the matter? I don't recognize that look. Have I done something wrong? I'll leave that for you to determine." "You got me pregnant," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "What? When? How? I thought you said you couldn't conceive." I must have appeared utterly shocked. She met my gaze. The what is that I'm pregnant? The when would have been around 3 months ago. Most likely during our honeymoon. The how is that we made love passionately for days on end. I asked the doctor about my physical conditions affecting my ability to conceive. She explained that due to my reduced stress levels about getting pregnant and your strong sperm, a few of them managed to fertilize the egg. So are you happy or upset? You still seem stunned. I embraced her and expressed my joy. We decided to start anew and welcome our own child. Correction, Beth interjected. We're expecting twins. Yes, I'm certain I just returned from the doctor. They should arrive in about 6 months. I was genuinely thrilled and assured her of my happiness. We agreed to stay in the apartment for a while, but begin searching for a house. We discussed that after the twins were born, I would undergo a vasectomy. 2 children would be sufficient, and she wouldn't have to worry about birth control. I was a content man and eagerly anticipated becoming a father once again.